When we want to talk about different costs for different purposes, we can start asking the question, if the enterprise is making profits, is it doing well? What is the first sign of an enterprise failing? How do we know an enterprise is going through good times or they're going through bad times? What is the common companions during these times? When the enterprise stop making profits, can it survive? Has constantly remained the same. If you take the old General Motors began its operations in 1908, more than a century ago, but in 2009, General Motors became New General Motors under the Chapter 11 Enterprise reorganization due to its going into bankruptcy. The question here is, why did General Motors stop making profits? For an enterprise to have a decreasing profits, there are 5 signs that we have to look at, or 5 aspects that we have to look at. First is the products. In General Motors, they were making cars that people didn't want and they could not sell these products. Second is innovation. They were too slow to innovate, partly because of its size. Third is adaptability to the environment. General Motors was too bureaucratic and was unable to change to market needs. Fourth is the manageability. They had a large dealer network. It was too large and became unmanageable. Fifth is the cash flows. They had to sell off its formerly profitable financing business to survive. In General Motors' situation, on 8th of June 2019, there was a bailout. The bailout was done to transform from old General Motors into new General Motors because old General Motors wanted to go into bankruptcy with its liabilities. The financial restructure that came into effect before the new General Motors came in, they shed several brands and stopped making some brand vehicles like Saturn, Pontiac, and Hummer. And they also sold. In times of insolvency of especially large enterprises, the government has a role to play. And there are 2 aspects here. One are the social costs, the second are the social benefits. The social cost to the government in the intervention was US Treasury invested $49.5 billion in the new General Motors shares. In 2013, it recovered $39 billion by selling those shares by incurring a loss of $10.3 billion. US Treasury also invested $17.2 billion into the General Motors former financing company, GMSC. And it recovered $19.6 billion when it sold its shares in 2014. making a gain of 2.4 billion. So there's a net financial loss, and that financial loss is a social cost. It's a social cost because there's a social benefit. The General Motors bailed out saved 1.2 million jobs. And because the new General Motors was floated, it preserved tax revenue of 34.9 billion. So why did all General Motors underwent bankruptcy? The answer to that is flexibility versus rigidity. When sales were decreasing, costs were not. To survive when sales were decreasing, some of the bigger costs must also decrease. Not selling many cars can lead to close of manufacturing plant, staff layoffs, and reducing material purchases. In the case of General Motors, they had high fixed costs in related to the union contract, and closing a plant and staff layoff are expensive, and there are additional costs to be paid to employees on pensions, and legacy health care costs were also fixed costs that General Motors had to incur. So rather than paying those costs, General Motors decided that all General Motors will go into bankruptcy and then float a new General Motors.